Hello, it's Eveldy, and we're here today for the second video guide for the game Little Witch Nobeta, and this time we will talk about combat, which is the main aspect of the game. So firstly, I want to say a few things about the settings that I use. So in gameplay, there's two settings that you may want to change. In this game is the camera shake. You may want to put it to 0 so the camera stops shaking when you get hit or hit an enemy. And a disable attack pause, which will pause the game between each attack, which can be really annoying in some cases. And you may also change the camera settings. Personally, I play with most of the settings set to default, but for example, you may want to increase a bit the camera distance. So let's go into the video now. The first thing to notice in the game is that one of your main resources during combat will be your mana bar, which is shown at the top of the screen in blue. Each time you will do an attack or charge, it will consume mana and it will determine how much you can attack before being able to only do melee attacks. So pay really good attention of this bar during all your fights. In this game there are 4 types of magic, which are Arcane, Ice, Fire and Thunder. You can change which type of magic you use using the magic select wheel, or if you're using a keyboard, you can use a quick swap buttons that are only available using mouse and keyboard. Unfortunately, you can do this on a controller. Each type of magic is quite different, but we will first explain what are the actions you can do, and then for each type of action we will describe the differences between each magic. The first action that you can perform is the standard magic attack. They are done using left click with a mouse and a keyboard, and those type of attack will necessitate you to aim correctly. To help you doing this, you can either hold the attack button, like this, it will show a little reticle, or you can hold the aim button that will allow you to aim precisely. Notice that when doing either of those actions, the camera will move a little bit, so you will need to reposition your camera each time to aim precisely. Notice that you can also shoot while you're in the air, but you can't jump while shooting, so it can be a really important thing to know. For example, when using ice, you can jump at all. You can also help yourself by using the target lock-on feature that you can find in the control settings. For me, it's set to C, and it will allow to lock onto an enemy to shoot at him more easily. The next action that you can perform is Chanting. It will allow you to charge a spell. When you start chanting, a charge bar will start to fill. The fill duration depends on the type of magic. Arcane is the fastest and Thunder is the slowest. And when the bar will be full, you will be able to do a special attack. For example, with Arcane, it shoots a big projectile that knock back enemies. Notice that when chanting, if you do melee attacks or dodge or jump, it will stop the chanting process, so the bar won't fill anymore. We will see later on multiple ways to fill the chanting bar way faster, but for the moment, just notice that when there are mana orbs in the air, if you start chanting, they will come to Nobeta way faster, which will allow us to do fast spell chanting later on. The last action that you can perform are melee attacks. Depending on if you're in the first or second half of the game, the animation will be quite different, but the principle is the same. Those can be done without any mana, and they will greatly regenerate mana if you hit enemies successfully with one, so it will be your main option when you're without any mana. One thing to notice is that if you have a charged magic, like for example fire, your melee attacks will be greatly empowered. For example, using fire, they will do fire patterns that will burn enemies and bypass most shields. So that's something to know to make melee attacks way more powerful. The first magic you will be able to use in the game is Arcane magic. It's quite effective at mid-range, has low mana consumption, and it is really fast to charge and has low cooldowns. It's highly effective when using charge attacks because they can knock back and stagger enemies. Especially against Seal, for example, you can stagger continuously and the fight will be really easy to do. Starting at level 2, you can also cast the charge attack multiple times with only one chanting, which is really good to do a lot of damage in the earlier part of the games. And it can pass through multiple enemies using charge attacks, meaning that when there are a lot of enemies, you can kill them really easily. It also empowers melee attacks a bit, and starting level 4 allows to shoot magic projectiles using your melee attacks. It can be quite effective, but I prefer using fire magic for melee attacks. The second magic is ice. It is really good at long range since it's really precise, has really high DPS and a good damage per mana consumption value. Unfortunately, it has a low to no knockback effect on enemies, so it won't be really good when enemies rush on you. But it's still really effective against multiple enemies using the charge lock-on feature that allows you to lock onto multiple enemies and kill them all in one charge attack. It also grants a shield and fire protection when charged, which will be really useful against some enemies like Monica and the Bear. And it allows to easily aim weak point on most enemies because the charge attack shoot projectiles from the air and it will shoot directly at the head of most enemies. For example, against the first phase of Monica with against the Bear, it will be really useful to do a ton of damage. The third magic you unlock is the fire magic. It is really good at close range but becomes way weaker at longer range because the spread effect of the basic attack makes it impossible to hit enemies at long ranges. It has also long cooldowns and long charge, but as the highest DPS in the game at higher level, like starting level 4, it can be really effective, for example in Trial Tower, against some bosses like Seal, where you can kill really fast using it. But be mindful because it has a really high mana consumption, so you will want a lot of mana regeneration sources when using it. And notice that the charge attack deals a really good burst damage, can be really good against multiple enemies, but it inflicts self-damage at all levels, so be mindful of that. You could kill yourself using fire magic. Also, starting level 3, the charge attack attracts enemies. It can be really good against multiple enemies or enemies that try to move really fast like Vanessa 2. And the melee attacks are really good. It can bypass shields, deal ton of damage, and even put some enemies on fire. The last magic you'll unlock is the Thunder magic. It is really good at long range using basic attack and also at close range using charge and melee attacks. But be mindful because it has really long cooldowns and a long charge time, so there will be a lot of time when you won't be able to do anything using this magic. It also features the highest burst damage for any basic magic attack, and since it's really precise, it allows you to chain headshots really easily, meaning that you can clear most rooms in the game using only this magic really effectively. The charge attack is insanely powerful. You can abuse the fact that using purple crystals you can regenerate your mana really fast and chant nearly instantly, meaning that you can obliterate most bosses in the game with enough intelligence stats and just thunder. Be careful when using charged thunder attacks because the same way as fire it can inflict self-damage. Fortunately, starting level 4 the self-damage is disabled on thunder, meaning that you can spam the charge attack at close range really safely. It also features a time slow while the charge is full, meaning that what you can do is charge thunder, spam a melee attacks with the time slow so the enemies can do much, and then you can repeat it. Now that we've talked about all the different types of magic, you may have noticed that there are some modifiers and specific enemy states. So the first damage modifier in the game are the weak points. Most enemies' weak point is their head, so that means you will want to do headshots in most of the cases. But some enemies, like Seal first phase, doesn't have any weak point, so there's no point in trying to aim at any specific place. The second damage modifier in the game is what I call the shield state. So that's what happens, for example, when you're trying to hit the armor with a magic spell. You will notice that he deals way less damage until you hit behind his shield, so you need to stagger him first. Some type of magics, like the fire melee attacks, can allow to bypass the shields, so that's why fire melee attacks are really useful in Trial Tower, for example. And some bosses, like Vanessa 1 and Vanessa 2, when they change phase, they will have a really high damage reduction, meaning that you can't really do much damage during this. The last special state in the game is when an enemy is staggered. So you will notice, for example, when you cast a charge Arcane attack to armor, he will be staggered for some time and he won't do anything during the stagger duration. So that can be really useful against most bosses, for example against Armor, Tanya, and Beer. But some boss, like Knight and Nonota, doesn't really get staggered in one hit. You need to hit them multiple times before they get staggered. Also, notice that in Trial Tower, when you will stagger most bosses, they will do a counter attack. So that's what Tanya does when you stagger her, and she will go on you instantly to do a counter. So be careful about this. Now that you know to attack, you will need to defend yourself against enemies. The first move to defend yourself against enemies are the evade movements. So there are two types of evades. When you evade in any direction, Nobeta will do a long evade movement, and when you evade without any direction, she will do a small back up. That is a bit shorter and will allow you in some cases to attack faster after an evade movement. Also notice that depending on if you are using Nonota or Nobeta, the evade movement is different. For Nonota it's a small roll, and for Nobeta she will do somewhat of a dash forward. You can evade while doing melee attacks, meaning that you can cancel any melee attack early, so that will be really useful to get out of an attack pattern of any boss. Also, when you will upgrade Wind, you will be able to dodge in the air and also dodge while being staggered. The second option to defend yourself against enemies are what we call parries or counters. This is a bit harder to do than evading because the timing is really specific. So to perform a counter, what you need to do is to press the melee attack once. It will go into a counter state for 150 milliseconds. So the timing is really short. And if an enemy attacks you during this counter timing, Nobeta will perform a counter. So you will need at least absorption level 1 to perform counter, and depending on your absorption level, it will stagger enemies and regenerate more mana. You can cancel the absorption animation early using an evade. It will allow you to hit more faster after a counter, but it will also give you less mana, so that's kind of a trade-off. Most often against Tanya, for example, I keep the lingering animation. Counter gives way more mana when you're close to an enemy because it will deal damage to them on top of countering the spell. So that means, for example, against Beer, that you will want to be really close to him when he does a double projectile attack to get way more mana. Notice that you can't counter while you're taking damage. Doing a melee attack won't trigger the counter timing. So that means, for example, against Beer, you will need to get out of the fire damage over time before being able to do any counter. If you stay in the fire, even if you don't get staggered, you won't be able to counter at all. Something that will come really handy during combat are items. They come in different sizes, small, medium, and big, and in different types. There are the green, the blue, the yellow, the purple, and the white crystals. So the first crystal is the green crystal. It allows you to regenerate HP when consumed. The second one allows you to regenerate mana points, so that's the blue one. The yellow one will give you a temporary shield that will reduce the damage you take and also reduce knockback effects a lot, so that will be really useful against most bosses. The fourth type are the purple crystals. So the same as the white crystals they have to use. If you use a purple crystal, it will spawn mana orbs that can be really useful to charge a spell fastly. And the white crystals will spawn HP orbs. So the green orbs that you can see here, that allows you to regenerate HP. Those crystals also have a second function. If you drop them, they will spawn a little area. For the purple crystal, it will be a mana regeneration area, so that means you will regenerate mana way faster while you're in the circle. And for white crystal, it will spawn an HP regeneration circle, so that means you will increase your HP regeneration while in the circle. One thing to notice is that if you're using a mouse and a keyboard, you can use an item while chanting. So you can't do that directly if you use the button to consume an item, but if you use the shortcut, for instance it's F8 for me, you will be able to use the item, meaning that you can chant a spell really, really fast. Notice that you can't use an item if you're evading or doing melee attacks. So if you try to do that, it will cancel the item consumption. So be careful, for example, when you try to regenerate HP or mana. If an enemy starts attacking you and you need to evade, you won't consume the item. And in the same way, if you fall off, like you get knockback while using, for example, a purple crystal, it will drop it and spawn the circle instead of spawning the orbs. One thing you will try to do during combat is to do fast spell chanting. So you want to charge a spell as fast as possible. The way to do this is that you need to collect mana while you're chanting. So while you're charging a spell, you want mana orbs, for example, to come to you. The easiest way to do that is using an item, for example a purple crystal. If you chant, the mana orbs will come to you and they will feed your chanting bar instead of giving you mana. So there are other ways to get to the same results. You can use mana orbs that are in jars and pots. For example, against armor, you can use it to charge Arcane really easily. You can also do melee attacks that will give you mana, so this will fill the chanting bar. So obviously you can use purple crystals, that's the easiest way. And you can also use mana orbs that spawn when hitting with melee attacks the big blue crystals that you can see, for example, at the beginning of the game or in some places like Dark Tunnel. Notice that mana orbs don't despawn between cutscenes. That means, for example, that you can shoot the jars after killing the bear and you will be able to cast a spell at the beginning of Monica. Or just before starting Seal 2, you can break the crystals and it will give you a free charge Thunder at the start of the Seal 2 fight. Notice that you can also do double charge. So to do double charge, what you need to do is to charge, for example, Thunder, pop a purple crystal, cast your spell, then charge again. Since you spawned mana orbs using the purple crystal, you're able to do a second charge attack. This can be really useful to chain Thunder attacks against some bosses. There are two last advanced topics that I wanted to keep for the end of this video. The first one is that you can use the aim button to cancel melee attack animations. So that will allow you to chain melee attacks a bit faster. That's used a lot, for example, against Nobeta to charge fire and do a lot of melee attacks. One other really advanced technique is to do what I call the quick swap. So in this game, each magic type has an independent cooldown for the basic attack, meaning that, for example, you can do a thunder basic attack, then a fire basic attack, and while you were using the fire spell, the thunder cooldown was still going on. So that means if you go to thunder again, it will be available again. So that allows you to get the highest DPS possible in the game by chaining a lot of different type of magic attacks. Most often, I just chain thunder and fire attacks. That's what I do in Trial Tower to kill the boss the fastest possible.